Welcome to Twice 5 Miles Radio, fertile ground for conversations worth listening to and remembering. I'm James Nave, your host, and always airing first on WPVM-LP Asheville 103.7, streaming online, WPVMFM.org, the voice of Asheville, heard all over the world, and on other community radio stations like KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio, coming out of Taos, New Mexico. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song. WalterParks.com for more on Walter's music. Thank you, Devine Dial, for managing WPVM-FM in Asheville, and Robin Collier for managing KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio in Taos, New Mexico. You can always reach me, Nave, at jamesnave.com. Nave is spelled Nave. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to answer you. I'd like to remind you that we're sponsored by the Imaginative Storm Writing Project. ImaginativeStorm.com is the place to go if you're interested in improving your writing chops. And also if you're interested in finding about our free Saturday morning and Thursday afternoon workshop. Every week, my creative collaborator, Allegra Houston, and I are on that Zoom call, and we have a gathering of wonderful people, great folks, good writers, and we all play around for an hour. So it's very easy, very simple, and a lot of fun. ImaginativeStorm.com if you'd like to know more about that. So today I have a new friend on, Henry Jones. And I met Henry this past weekend at the Black Mountain Blues Festival. I was hosting the stage at the Busch Garden restaurant there in Black Mountain. It's a great restaurant. If you live in the Asheville area and you have a chance to go to Black Mountain, you can check out the Busch restaurant. It's great. Have great burgers. I don't eat many burgers, but I did eat one this weekend. Henry Jones was one of the featured musicians at the Black Mountain Blues Festival. And Henry is a master blues musician, a master musician. He tours, he plays, he's been doing it all of his life. And when he settled down on that stage to offer up what he had to give us, the gifts of his music, I could tell that he was as easy with his music as the trees were with the summer that surrounded us. So, Henry Jones, welcome to Twice 5 Miles Radio.
Oh, well, thank you so much, James. It's a pleasure to speak with you. We were talking backstage before I went on. We had to stop talking so I could go do the set. But I was just having a good time hanging out with you.
Well, that's why I thought better do radio interviews sooner than later. That's for sure. So the blues. We all know, or we think we know, what the blues is. Most people hear blues songs on the radio. Most people have played the blues before if they play. But I'd like for you to give us a sense of the deeper essence of the blues and what it means to you, and why is it something that you have tracked all of your life? What's going on with that? And then we can go from there into stories or whatever else you want. But I want to know the essence of the blues from Henry Jones's perspective.
What I think it all boils down to is you got a couple of main factors. If you are an author or a poet and other art forms, you may be writing a story and a poem, and you may be just letting your imagination go wild. And that's a wonderful thing. I think with the blues at its core, I think it needs to start internally, basically coming from the inside out versus from the outside in. And I write lots of different kind of things, I think, but sometimes you'll see something and you'll be like, oh, that's interesting to me. And you'll proceed to write about it. I think blues at its best, it can express itself in different ways. It's coming from the inside out and it's radiating out. It can be pain, it can be joy. And all artists do this. It's just the process, I think, with the blues has to start more primal. You start there, and then the second part of that is the community of it. Because it's not just you expressing this hopelessness or this despair or this joy or wherever you're at. It's not just you, it's me expressing this and you picking up on it because you've been there. And if you haven't been there, maybe some of the younger set, you see lots of times you see some younger kids in there and they're kind of enjoying it. Sometimes I like to think to them, if you ain't here now, one day you're going to be here.
So when you say internal, I'd like for you to give us a sense of what that internality looks like. What does it feel like? The primal. We all have that primal nature. We're all humans. We all feel something that we can't explain. So
Exactly.
blues emerges from that. And yet you also write as well. You create the song, you compose the song. So it's a combination of the internal organization and the internal primitive urgencies that have existed forever coming together. So what does that feel like inside of you? And does it remain active all the time? A slow burn sometimes boils up others. The more you connect with it, do you hear more, feel more as you connect with it? It's a sense of something.
When you're listening to some other music and you're just alone and you're listening to this and you're trying to understand where this person is coming from and what are they trying to communicate, and then you listen to it and then you go from just listening to it to actually feeling it, and then you end up doing that yourself, because sometimes you're angry or you're this or that, and the first thing I try to do, this is just like on a bigger growth palette, trying to understand where your head is at. Give yourself those pep talks where you're like, okay, now this probably made you angry, but you need to figure out a way to get through this, and you need a way so what you end up doing while you're doing your personal work, like analyzing where you're at and how you need to behave, and what's your best options on how you're going to move. This person said something to me, and I need to process this the right way. So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, how did it make me feel? Yeah, it kind of made me feel discounted. All right, I'm gonna acknowledge that. I'm gonna take that in and say, okay, that made me feel discounted. First, you got to admit that's how you're feeling about it, but then you get back to your guitar or your instrument of choice, piano or whatever, and then you start to take that feeling as you're playing. How you start to take that feeling as you're playing, and you're playing, and you're thinking, y'all don't need to be skipping over me like this.
Well, I'm also thinking about the blues and I'm thinking of the color blue. Nobody says, I'm going to play the reds. I'm going to play the purples. You might play the purples. I don't know. But
You could. I would like
the
to see somebody
blues,
do it. Yeah.
I've never thought of the different kind of colors applied to the different kind of music. Bright music, I guess, would be more orange, red, more festive. But the blues takes you
Yeah.
down. I always think of the blues as something that addresses the troubles of the time. The river
Yes.
flows down to the sea, and we get baptized in the river and we wash our troubles away, all of that. Does blues have an optimistic side? And how does that
Oh, absolutely.
factor in? How does that
Oh,
work?
if we go back to square one being expressive, the joy comes out of that too. I mean, there are some very joyous songs that comes back to the expressive part of it. Joy is communal. They're at that festival. That was a very joyous group, a lot of smiles, folks patting each other on the back, a lot of hugs. I mean, there was a joyous communal kind of thing. And I believe good art comes out of that as well. I had recently that so many blues songs, great blues songs, are just seriously and heavy and at the very bottom of the end. And that's really raw and stuff like that too. But that expression can manifest itself in joy. And a lot of it came out of the church. A lot of your old church songs are or down by the riverside, down by, that's.
I think there's some joy in the sense of finding one's way back to an optimistic shore.
Yeah.
So we go down, down, down into something troubling.
Yes.
We work it out somehow, and then we
Yes.
come back up. So I'm going to lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, suggest I've made a conclusion. I've been
Yes.
transformed, no
Yes.
longer the sword and shield. We never hear, I'm going to pick whatever it is up. What did you pick
Yeah.
up? And I guess maybe I'm going to lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I'm going to study war no more, implying you picked up peace. You picked up a sense of harmony, perhaps. And that's where the joy lies.
Music, has changed over the years. It's become more of a commercial endeavor, and I believe at its best and at its finest, it's a communal. So we all work together, and now our work day is over, and we're all going to get together and we're going to play and sing and throw these cares off of the work day.
And I'm thinking of when I was a boy, I grew up in Western North Carolina. I'm not a musician. I couldn't really sit down and play pro with you or any of the other great musicians I know. I do strum a pretty good house guitar. And I remember learning to play it because I was fascinated with one string. Where do I put my finger and what kind of sound does it make? And I remember the communal playing my father did with all of the Appalachian people who played music. So I do have a sense of that. And I am thinking about the commercial aspect. It's interesting because none of the musicians were commercial who played with my father. I'm sure when you grew up, there were plenty of musicians around who just sat on the back porch and strummed their guitars or played whatever
Yep.
instrument they played, no problem. And yet the commercial musician, fellow like you, out traveling around, earning a living, generating records, doing concerts, playing festivals like the Black Mountain Blues Festival. You're the traveling troubadour. You're like the person who plants the apple seeds. What was the guy's name? Johnny Appleseed went around and
Johnny Appleseed.
put the
Yeah.
seeds in the ground. Now, I don't know how much truth's to that, but people do that. You do plant the seeds. In some ways, the commercial aspect of music is important because it allows people like you to move from one place to the next, meet people like me, do this radio
Yes.
interview. So,
Yes.
speak to that idea a little bit in terms of the commercialization and the professionalism of it all.
You hit the nail right on the head there because it is a joy to be able to move around, get different spots, meet different people. And I love it. I mean, I absolutely going around meeting folks and playing the music. When we started talking about the uniqueness of that style of blues and roots music, like you're talking about with your father and them, and the roots music and the country music, I think what sets it aside is it started only at the community level. You get rock and roll, you get pop, you get rap and some of that other stuff that was basically it started basically as a commercial endeavor. Pop music started as a commercial thing. Whereas blues and roots, it started, nobody sat on the front porch and played Peggy Sue or or any of your other great pop songs. They were created for an audience. They were created for the radio, and that's all good stuff. But I'm saying the reason why I think blues music and roots music feels different is because it was created for you and I to share collectively together at the end of our days, just our little community juke joints where we all go and hang out. And that's the DNA of the different styles of the more popular music today versus the blues. I am just completely grateful to the organizations that bring me in and let me spread that around. Now, because it's a communal style, not necessarily every community actually has it. So when I'm around different areas, sometimes I'll come in and I'll play something. I have a set of faces looking at me like they don't hear a lot of this because there's just where you're at in that particular area. We don't move around the world like we used to, where we had people hanging out at different places and stuff and people playing music. So without the troubadours moving around and throwing this new idea into the pot, wow, this is a whole different style. This is something that you're not going to hear this in Publix or your local grocery stores. You're, picking up bananas or whatever. You're not going to hear this kind of stuff. Commercially, being able to move around and play it, you don't see it and you don't hear it as much. Especially with the little kids, I see little kids bopping up and down. I'm sure their parents and grandparents have played them some things. Sometimes I just wonder if anybody has played this for them. And so I'm glad to contribute.
And it's an interesting concept to think in the world we now live in, we have access to so much information.
Yeah.
And yet the troubadours are not moving around as much. Because we have access to so much information, we might think we don't need the troubadours anymore. You're really talking about the analog human experience, like what we were experiencing at the Black Mountain Blues Festival. You could have also called it the Black Mountain Troubadours Festival because there were troubadours, people wandering around from site to site, traveling in and moving in and out. It's so analog, so vinyl record feel. You know what I mean?
I love that because I live in the digital world. I mean, we're doing our digital thing right now, but I
Mhm.
mean, the spirit of it is community. And the spirit of it is not like you'll have live music played open air, where you can hear it through the air and you can, you go see it and you might be standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody you never even met, but you're both smiling and that communal aspect of it. A lot of our lives now, earbuds by ourselves, nobody around, completely alone. I think we need to counterbalance this a little.
And I think people would be well served to think in these terms again. When we were at the Busch Gardens and you were playing, the music I heard emanating from this little wooden stage and the small microphone you had, or you didn't have much gear. The microphone was the same size, but it was just a
Yeah.
small gear. There was no big stage thing going on.
No.
Very little digital stuff happening, maybe a bit through the microphone and organizing the sound. So we didn't have many digital numbers. There was no algorithm deciding how the music would float through the air and land in my ears, or for that matter, the ears of all the other people gathered around, having their food, watching the
Yeah.
afternoon pass, and listening to the music. And it was so nice to think that. I'm now thinking about this idea of the porch singers, the folks gathered around with the musicians gathered around, the roots idea. There's an improvisational vibe that's always present versus the Peggy Sue song. Now, imagine any of the great songs probably were written by people who have originally sat on the porches and then
Oh
moved
yeah.
into the formula.
Right.
But there's a spontaneity that exists in this kind of music that existed with you. Things happened. You were hot. The day was hot.
Yeah.
You were banging your foot on the ground. You were responding to the audience. You were moving your head. You were having a great time with your collaborator there with the drums. It was just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you don't have that with a song that's played through the digital space. It starts and it ends and it's mixed and it's as close to perfect as you can get.
Yeah. So to be in real time, this because when you're playing, we're just doing all the things that you just described on the thing. This is the only time that this is going to happen. This block of time that we're together playing and hearing, this is it. This is the only time. This Saturday early evening in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and I'm playing and I'm joking with the crowd and we're interacting back and forth. This is the only moment in space and time where this is going to happen. This moment of me playing and interacting with these individual people, this is a singular thing. This will never happen again.
Yeah, and I'm always intrigued when I gather around with people to write material, doing a writing workshop, or folks on the stage. As you said, it's never going to happen again, and it didn't exist before the moment started. It did not exist.
No.
This is completely, utterly brand new,
So
and
one time.
it's one time. It's ephemeral as mist on a swamp. It's going to vanish as soon as the sun warms up. And
Enjoy it for what it is. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Keeping this joy in mind, when I was a boy, my father played the music, and I heard the old fellows play. Old fellows, they were young fellows at the time, but the fellows playing the music, right? I would look and I would wonder and think, how could I do that? Could I do that? Is it possible? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I finally got big enough to hold the guitar, and I remember saying, can you teach me how to move my fingers on the strings? And my father showed me, I don't know what, D maybe, who knows? Maybe I just pressed the E string, the first string on the third fret, stroked three strings and made G. I don't know. Can you tell us about the times before you played and what drew you to it? How did you first start to learn? What was that first memory of the experience of making a sound with an instrument, and how did it feel?
So, that's an awesome question. I remember hearing the instrument before I ever played it. I have three older sisters, and one of my sister's friends lived around the corner, and he had a guitar. And in the summers, he'd open his window and he would just be playing. I'm riding my bike around, and I'm listening, and I remember being struck like, what is that? And, it doesn't hit everybody the same way. We're all riding our bikes around the block, and I'm stopping. I'm stopping. I need to hear this. The other part of the crew, they're just going on. They're going on. I'm stopping in front of his house because I have to hear this. What is this? Is an electric guitar. It's making this sound. I love this sound. I have to figure this out. That's kind of where it started from, was hearing the instrument, and he was just going for it. I ended up meeting him later on. His name was Irv Lacey. I ended up meeting him later on, and the cat could just flat out play. And that's where it kind of drew me in to hear that. And then later on, I had the friends that would introduce me to other different kind of music. I had a great friend named Kevin Campbell. He had a great record collection, and he would sit me down and he would say, "Hey, listen to this." And he would play Elvin Bishop, or he would play an old Muddy Waters record or something like that. And then I had already had a lot of old vintage records at the house. This was a story, but real quick, that my parents had a house party. The man that was DJing it left a bunch of milk crates of records around, and we never saw the man. He heard he got into a little trouble, but we didn't see him. And so I go through all these records that he left over, and I would listen to this, and I would just become captured by it. Just the sound just kept coming back, and that's what got me started. Like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And then when I started, somebody showed me a couple chords. And when I could first make that first chord, in my mind, I'm not too far from where I want to be. Now, I was a long way from where I wanted to be. I was a very long way from where I wanted to be. But because I could make that first chord, because I could just get that couple grains of sand on that beach that I wanted to be on, because I could get just a couple little things in that, okay, I think I could do it. And I just hung in there, and it started to happen.
Do you recall the first guitar you touched, you picked up? You're the little boy. I'd like to know how old you were riding your bicycle around. You had to be somewhere at least maybe 8, 9, 10, or 11 to get on the bike, maybe sooner, but that's about the age of the boys when they ride their bikes around. And you heard this music. Did you have a sense that music was going to be a paramount factor in your life before that bicycle ride? So did you have that sense of music being a paramount factor? And I would like to know if you remember what guitar you first touched, when you first felt the weight of the instrument in your hands.
I don't think I touched Irv's guitar. I only heard Irv from outside this house. The only sense I had, just to lock the brakes up, we have to hear this. Just, you stop. Let everybody else go. I have to hear this. And then coming back, Dave riding by there intentionally, just hoping to hear him play. You guys go somewhere. I'm going by his house, meeting him later on. The first guitar that I held, it might have been the first one that I bought. And I think I was 16, 17. And it was just I don't even remember what this thing was. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very balanced, but it was mine.
So you bought a guitar before you learned how to play. Your intention was to buy the guitar,
yes,
and learn how to play it.
I was going to play it. I had made my mind up before I even bought the thing. I took the bus back. We had bus systems there, and I took the bus downtown with my friend Kevin Campbell. Went into a pawn shop, and I had, I think, a grand total of like $150.
That's a pretty good bit of money back then, though. $150 was a pretty good bit of money. Yeah.
Yeah. And I needed to get a guitar, an electric guitar, and somebody else said, well, you got to get your little amp too. So I get your little amplifier, and went down there and got it and carried it back to the bus, got back on the bus and took it home.
And what town was this happening in?
This was in Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, Dayton, Ohio.
Now, I have another question about the boy on the bicycle. I guess you could write a song about the boy on the bicycle, and that's you. Do you think that urgency to stop that bicycle, to lean into that music, that suggests to me the blues coming from the inside? It was you putting the brakes on the bicycle, but there was something more grand going on, perhaps. I'm romanticizing, I know. I hope you don't mind.
No, no, I don't mind at all. No, here's the thing. I had heard tons of music. My parents always played lots of great music around, and we moved around a good little bit. So I'd heard lots of different music. That's when I felt it. That's when I was like, he was playing notes and he's and that and just I think maybe something about just the guitar and not like a whole ensemble or whatever. That's when I remember what music should feel like to me. I think that's why I stopped the bike because I'd heard music before
And if you heard it before in your parents' house, it was over the records. What you were hearing was the
with
same
somebody
thing.
playing.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And it's what I felt when I heard you play. You were Irv to me. I'm like, wow, there's
yeah,
Irv, wow. I mean, I've been around a lot of music and I play, so I'm not quite as young and naive as we once were. Yet you heard Irv commingling his essence with the sounds around you. This
yes.
wasn't music. This was just one more harmonious contribution to the complexity that surrounded you as you were the boy traveling down the road, going toward
Yeah.
manhood.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we got to stop for a second.
Pause. I'm going to turn to the right here. I'm going to stop in Irv's driveway.
Yeah.
So Irv takes on almost a mythical aspect here in this memory, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely, he does. And it was years before I actually could play. It sparked an interest. I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm reading about different things. And then later on, he had a band. I would go see his band. It's still just completely fascinated by it. So it took a long time from the time the idea till the time I actually got to start working on it. And I think that might have been a good thing. That wasn't like I went home and my parents were like, okay, we got to run downtown and get you a guitar right away. It grew from a long period of time and a lot of other factors, but that's what got us started.
So you end up with your guitar at 16. You've had your experience with Irv. You've grown up in a household of music, family, people gathering around. A household can't have music without a bit of frivolity and happiness and all of that as well.
Yeah.
When you started playing, you learned the guitar. At what point did you really start to think, I can commit to the professional aspect of this? I know you have records, you have a reputation, you have momentum, you play for a living now. It's your life. You probably have done it so long you don't really remember a time when you didn't do it. And yet, in the early days, you were building up, getting ready to lift off the runway and
Yeah.
fly. So, when did you know you could pull the throttle back and sail?
A couple years into it, I knew that I could play the thing. It took a little while, but past the sore fingers, it took a little while to where I got enough sand on the beach to where it looked like this is starting to take off. And once I started, I played for several years. Once I started to write to where I felt like I understood music well enough to start writing music and creating my own thing, that's when it gave me the confidence to say, okay, not only can you play it, but you can create it. And that's what kind of give me a little bit more juice, I guess, to keep going.
And how did you start getting gigs? And when did you decide I'm going to make this shift into full time? Or when did that decision make itself for you?
It's only really been the last few years I've had a lot of success on that level. It really started to take off right before the pandemic. I played and done different things and stuff like that, but it really, 18, 19, it really started to get good. So we're thinking, okay, yeah, we're getting some nice opportunities here. And then we all did our pandemic thing, which we all know how that went. And so then after that, you had to kind of start to rebuild connections because some of the things that you were doing previous to 2020 don't exist anymore. So you just kind of have to start rebricking the house and putting it back together and start making your connections. And what seems to happen, one show leads to the next show because I do all my own booking and this and that. So, but it seems to happen that I've got this opportunity, come over here and do this. I go over there and do that. And then the next thing follows in. And then they become yearly. You play one place and you're like, hey, man, we really like what you're doing. Come back next year. So you have repeat customers or repeat offers. And once you do that, if you do well there, then you sandwich that together with different spots in different cities. Communities, what there's the word we're using again, you're in the community where you're like, hey, I brought this guy in. He's easy to work with and he does a good show. And then when you email them, they know who you are. But getting to that point, it took a little while.
And by telling us that you book your own shows, brings up the subject of music business.
Yeah.
And it is a business.
You're
your own little factory. You generate your material and that's your product and people consume it. And then you move on to the next spot. Do you find doing business as a musician easy, hard, frustrating? What are some of the good points and bad points of this kind of activity? A lot of people out there want to do these kind of freelance things. I mean, we're out there on our own. We're freelance life artists, making our way as we go. The troubadours moving around. I do poetry. I'm a troubadour of sorts. I know what that life is like. How does that suit you? Does it work? How do you make it work? What are some of the things you do?
If you make a connection somewhere, everybody's looking for variety and quality and this and that. And then if you're doing a show from somebody and then you're talking to people in that perimeter and you're letting them know, hey, this is kind of what I do. And then hey, well, I know this person in another city that would like this. I guess networking is the word that you use, but a lot of that is if you're in Savannah, Georgia, and you're playing around Savannah and you're doing some stuff and somebody in Macon that would be good in Savannah. So another troubadour, they do something unique to themselves. And you say, well, hey, I was just in Savannah. They've got this place down by the river. It's kind of really free flowing and nice. You would do that. And they say, yeah, cool. I like to do that. And then they tell you, hey, I'll get this place up in Macon. I like to do. You trade seeds, I guess, maybe like a farmer would do. Like, I've got these seeds that grow over here, and you say, I'll trade you some tomato seeds for some corn seeds or whatever. And
well, that's really interesting. I'm also thinking about the show as the sales pitch. I know that sounds a little car dealership vibe. You pitch yourself by way of your art. And when I see your art happening, I buy the whole idea of Henry Jones. You don't try to sell it like I'm trying to sell you a car. I buy into it. And from a producer point of view, I imagine one of the core things a producer wants, they want to have the professionalism. They also want the musician to make them look good. If I book you and you shine, then your light falls on me.
Yep. And here as an artist too, when somebody books me, I want to represent well for them, because they gave me the opportunity. So I really want to knock it out of the park. I want that promoter to look good. I want them to go back and whoever that they're dealing with, I want them to go back and say, hey, that Henry Jones, he did a great job.
And I like the idea of the seed metaphor. And I also like the idea of how the dandelion's seeds float around on the air. And in a sense, this life that you are living, the musician's life, the professional entertainer's life, and I've lived this life myself quite a bit as well, it seeds itself. We are like little dandelions being floated around in the air, little seeds, and we blow from one place to the next. And when we land, we have to do our job to make the garden grow. We bring our essence to it, and then every time you do a concert, the garden grows right in front of the audience, like it did for
Yeah,
me when I saw you in Black Mountain.
I think you're right. Like maybe we have a bee that'll pick us up and
Carry us around. So we're getting about 20 minutes or 15 minutes away from the time to close this out. I'd like for you to give me a sense of some of the records that you've made and what it's like to go in the studio and make those records and how that works for you.
Well, see, I have not recorded a lot of stuff. I'm really lax behind that. I have leaned into playing live. I have tried a couple of things because I think a lot of my sound is spontaneous and I like to really be in the moment. I think that's made it really difficult to make records. If you ask me about making a record, I'm going to tell you I haven't made the one yet. I haven't found the spot yet. I think I've written some decent songs that I'll release them as singles. I haven't really made the connection like I want to with the record. Some of it has to do with location, where are you going to connect best, and there's personnel things, trying to find the right people that are going to fit with the right material and stuff like that. But that's still the elusive thing I'm chasing is to try to capture that essence. What I'm trying to communicate on stage, to try to capture that on a record. That's what I'm kind of lacking.
Well, that's a difficult thing to do, to get in that auditorium. I mean, get in the studio and try to capture it. I've recorded a bit. I don't have an album. Walter Parks and I have done a few poems and songs together, a little bit like what you did when I introduced you. I said, "Can you give me some background?" And you said, "Sure." And I stood up, spoke, and then you played behind me. I do know that when I am trying to record the music, I have a difficult time feeling as spontaneous as I do when I'm on stage. Maybe I'm immature, maybe I'm not quite as up to speed or whatever, but since I get a little nervous, I lose my sense of self when I'm
Yeah.
recording. I don't know. Maybe it's the permanence that I know I'm headed toward or something. Who knows?
Well, one of the things I've noticed is I'm trying to get over this hump, and it's bugging me a little bit. But one of the things I've noticed is when I pick up a guitar and I'm at the house and I'm playing and I'm relaxed and it sounds great. When I get on stage, I am playing for you. When you go in the studio, you're in a room and you can't see anything, and then they put these big muffs on you and it's really quiet. It just doesn't hit the same way. So, like I say, that is a goal, is to try to figure out how can you bring that same energy. I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna have to bring like 3 or 4 people in and play for them to where.
Well, I imagine people who do this at a big scale will play for people in the studio. I doubt
Mm,
they're in there alone. Although, now that I think about it, some people may love the idea of just being alone and creating in their head. Others may need whatever bump they need in terms of other people in the room. I don't know. When you write songs, do you sit down with your guitar and record and just make up verse as you go along? Or are you more mathematical and deliberate, jotting the lyrics down and then putting music to them?
I can go both ways on that. I have several notebooks. I have probably 4 notebooks that are laying around the house that at any given time I can put my hands on them and scribble down some lines. I'll do the same thing musically, sit around and I'll play some phrases on the guitar. I like the way they sound. I'll just tap them into my phone or whatever. And then at some point, the little sketch that I did over here on the guitar and the little sketch that I did over here lyrically, at some point, I'll try to introduce them like 2 single people that that you think would get along great. I think you guys might be good for each other. Don't you guys come together and talk a little bit, hang out, and see if anything clicks or whatever? And then sometimes the lyrics say, "I really don't care for that individual," or sometimes the music says, "That's not the right lyric for me." But sometimes they get together and they say, "We belong together, and we want you to help us."
Oh my gosh, Henry, now I have this terrific image of the lyric and the music coming together and having this great romance. And then
Yeah.
one day you step on stage and you say, "This is a brand new song and I've never played it before, but I'm going to try it out here." And you're the preacher and you
Yeah.
marry them on the
I'm an American.
stage. And then when you're finished singing, you got to say amen no matter what
Hey,
you've done, because bless
that's
this
it.
couple as they go forth in their
That's it.
prosperous life. Oh my. Oh, that is such a beautiful way of describing the writing process. I I just absolutely love it. And I can see it. And it's true. Actually, the reason this is
Yeah.
so hilarious and so much fun to talk about is it's absolutely true. So we have just a slight bit more time. Where do you call home now? You say you have your notebooks scattered around the house. Where are you living these days, and how often do you manage to work your way back to your address?
Okay, so I'm in Tupelo, Mississippi. It's a little town here in North Mississippi. It's also the home of Elvis. I got a little place outside of Tupelo. I love traveling. I love being around the different areas. And when you get to the cities, it's big and exciting, and there's a lot of stuff going on and stuff like that. But I also like being home with my wife here in Tupelo. It's quiet. She has a little garden, they got the animals and running around, and it's completely different from being in a showtime kind of environment. I was in Virginia and I was traveling back to Tupelo and thinking about all the things that went on. And then I pulled into the town, it was just like everything just slowed down, slow down.
So what kind of trees do you have in Tupelo? I'm trying to envision
Magnolias.
magnolia.
Magnolias.
Oh, I remember the blossoms on the magnolia trees. Aren't they
Yes,
just, and they
they're
have
wonderful.
a great fragrance, right? Much
Yes,
perfume.
yes, they smell wonderful, and we have a whole yard full of them. So it's a slower pace. There's a lot of things that get said about the area, and some of that is true, but I think the essence of it area, there's a lot of good people here, and it's a slower lifestyle. People speak to people. We still do that here. Go in the
Mm.
store and you don't have to know that person. They just can say hello.
I'm going to ask one naive question about magnolia trees. I believe I know the answer. Do they stay green year round?
Now, my wife she's the vegetation expert, but I believe they do, but they just don't bloom all year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my goodness, Henry, this is fantastic. I'm so glad that we met, and I'm thrilled that we have this interview. And I didn't play any of your music because this is a Zoom call, so I could ask you to play, but it would be a bit distorted. So if you have an
Yeah.
MP3, you can maybe send it to me, and I can include it in my mix of music that I play. You can just send me a couple of songs if you have that.
I
Um,
can do that. And I also want to send you real quick. I wanted to send you a picture because there's a building about maybe half mile, maybe a mile from me. It's the oldest building in North Mississippi. It's where Elvis Presley's parents got married. And it is where I'm going to start a jam session. The owner and I have got together, and a lot of our conversation was about community and music and that. So the owner of this building has decided that hey, just come start playing and let people show up, and let's just start building people play. And I'm hoping that some younger players will come out. Maybe I get to be somebody's Irv Lacey.
well, I'm glad that you concluded with that.
Yeah, yeah. I
And that
want
does
to. Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do.
and does the Blues Highway run through Tupelo or nearby?
That's South Mississippi. That's further south of Mississippi, but I know where it's at. It's a couple hours south.
Right.
Yeah,
So once you get this event happening at Elvis's parents' place where they got married, is that where it is?
that's where it's at. It's
Elvis's
at,
parents got married there. So here we are. My goodness, we're back to the couples meeting.
Yeah.
They're in the house, and then you're going to be the minister, the
I'm gonna
high
try to put it
preacher.
together. But the goal is it's just such a cool place. I'm gonna send you
Yeah.
some pictures of it. It has like old vintage signs from like the 30s and 40s, and it's just such a cool old place. Like I said, the idea is that Wednesday nights or Thursday nights, getting towards the evening, I'm gonna go up there and set up the guitar and start playing, and just invite people to come join me.
And this won't be a commercial thing. This will be a jam session.
Yeah.
So you show up and you do what you do. And
That's
oh my
exactly it,
goodness.
and just hoping to bring it back to the real core of it.
And you're going to guarantee a few notes, some vocals,
Yeah,
few magnolia trees will be outside. And
yeah,
most
yeah.
likely, since it's down in Tupelo, Mississippi, you will always have a somewhat warm night and maybe some steamy hot nights in the summertime. Is that close?
But that's dead on. That
Oh
is
my gosh.
exactly it. That is exactly. But I'll send you some pictures of the venue, because the minute you see that porch on the thing, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm thinking I need to make a drive down to Tupelo myself.
So
Well,
come on.
Henry, thank you so much for inviting me to come to Tupelo and sit on that porch. And thank you for filling us in on the blues a bit. I really enjoyed this. And I will look forward to whatever you send me. And I'm even thinking now it might be a good idea to connect you with my good friend Walter Parks up in St. Louis. He might want to
I
drive
have
down to
heard him.
Tupelo.
Yeah, I have heard his music. I dig what he does.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Walter's a good musician, and so are
yeah,
you. And I think the two of you, might collaborate. He does a lot of traveling around the Southeast. He does a lot of work in old churches. He'll find an old rundown church and find the
yeah.
owners and say, "Can I go in here, dust things off, and make a song and record it?" And he does.
Yeah.
So he's really interesting. Anyway,
Well, good. Maybe he and I can trade some seeds then.
I believe we can plant a few seeds in the garden, Henry. And thank you
Yeah.
for planting all your seeds today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.
And there you go, my friends. That was Henry Jones, blues player from Tupelo, Mississippi. I'm looking forward to getting down to Tupelo and sitting on Henry's porch in the steaming summer nights and see what happens. I can't play like some of those blues players can, but I certainly can appreciate it. And on that note, what I'd like to do now is give you a couple of tunes from Henry. He sent me some MP3s, as promised. So the first song you'll hear is titled Nomad, and the second song will be Some Fools. So here's Henry Jones playing you the blues.
Back to Mississippi, I'm gonna play the blues. There's a devil down there, but don't think nobody cares, 'cause he ain't got nothing new. And I really don't care about cotton, and there's people there I just can't use. Ever go back, I'm gonna play the blues. Back to Chicago, I won't be there long. That hardcore wind will cut you like a knife. Somebody might take your life, and you ain't done nothing wrong. And I really don't care for big cities, it's too hard for me to get on. If I ever go back, I won't be there long. Far be it for me to tell you how to live. Far be it for me, far be it for me to tell you how to live. Can't tell you how to live. Don't wanna tell you how to live. back to Ohio, I have a look around. Things don't change, everything stays the same, and I ain't never cared for the sound. And I really don't need another factory as long as old pen closed down. If I ever go back, I have a look around. So far be it for me, far be it for me, tell you how to live. Far be it for me, far be it for me, tell you how to live. Can't tell you how, can't tell you how to live, can't tell you how. If I ever go back to Mississippi, I'm gonna play the blues.
Was Henry Jones playing Nomads, and now here comes Henry Jones playing Some Fools.
I can't believe that I gave you so many things you didn't earn. Just to find out I could scream pretty loud, I would never be heard. I would never be heard. So forgive me now if I were talking out of turn. Cause a fool now sometimes won't ever learn. I ain't ever gonna learn. I can't believe that I bought every story that I ever was told. Just to find out God in my hand don't amount to gold. Don't amount to gold. So forgive me now if I were talking out of turn. Cause a fool now sometimes can't ever learn. So forgive me now if I were talking out of turn. 'Cause a fool now sometimes won't ever learn. Can't ever learn.
And there you go, my friends, a couple of blues tunes from Henry Jones, Nomads and Some Fools. We've arrived at the end of our time together, so I would like to say thank you so much for listening to Twice 5 Miles Radio, fertile ground for conversations worth listening to and remembering. I'm your host, James Nave, always airing first on WPVM LP Asheville 103.7 and streaming online, WPVMFM.org, the voice of Asheville heard all over the world, and on other community radio stations like KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio out of Taos, New Mexico. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song. WalterParks.com for more on Walter's music. Devine Dial, thank you for managing WPVM-FM in Asheville, and Robin Collier, the same. Thank you for managing KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio in Taos, New Mexico. You can always reach me, Nave, at jamesnave.com. Nave is spelled N-A-V-E. I'd like to remind you that we're sponsored by the Imaginative Storm Writing Project. If you'd like to improve your writing chops, imaginativestorm.com is a good place to look. We also offer free workshops on Saturday and on Thursday, so you might want to join us if you have some time. Once again, thank you ever so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it, and I hope you come back soon. And until then, maybe I'll catch you on that turnaround somewhere down the line.